Hello, hello, hello. My name is Robert. I am the recovery guy, and you have entered into The Fix. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Robert, and I am the recovery guy. And back by popular demand, I have Jason T. And Jason and I, even though I've relocated to Florida, Jason and I are forever friends. We met in the rooms of recovery probably 2 years ago, something like that. And we have stayed friends, partners in crime, as it were. And I thought Jason would be the perfect person to have to chat again today. Today's topic is the trap of complacency. Jason, say hello.
Well, hello. Thanks for having me on, Robert.
Oh, I appreciate
Good to
that.
be here.
If anyone knows about the challenges of complacency, and we're going to contrast that today, Jason, with being comfortable. There's nothing wrong with being comfortable in your sobriety. Matter of fact, we encourage individuals to become comfortable. But complacency, man, isn't that a trap?
Big time. Yeah, it's a trap that's got me a few times in the past.
Yeah, you know, and I like that because in my journey of over 3 decades, if I'm not careful, I think it's a trap of people like you and me who've been around for a minute. We can, as it says in the big book, and I'll read it here. It says, it's so easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We're headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. And then it talks about, for we are not cured of alcoholism, what we really have is a daily reprieve. But that resting on the laurels is a result of complacency. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. It's funny you pull that topic up right there because right before I called you, I just got off the phone right at 3:00 with an individual, and that's exactly what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Is complacency and that very topic right there.
Yeah, Jason, well-meaning people who really are on fire. And that's why I call this podcast a trap of complacency, because it really is a trap. We can fall into traps when we don't expect it. Isn't that right? Haven't you seen well-meaning people fall into that trap?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep. It's one of the biggest ones, I think.
Yeah. And we all have to guard against it. The newcomer, I think, is often the trap of using again if they haven't shaken it off or don't feel like. But those of us who have been around for a while, we think we're okay. We think we're fine. Some people would look at you or me or Dave or others who have been sober for a minute and say, why do you need to do this? Why do you need to do that? You can let up. You can relax now. You're sober. You've reinvented yourself. You got a great job. You're getting along with people. All those things, we can let our guard down. But I like where it says alcohol is a subtle foe, meaning it can sneak up on us when we least expect it. And the next thing you know, we're drinking a beer, we're having a shot, then we have a pint, and then we have a quart, and then we have a gallon, then we're dead. And if we don't think that is possible for us, then why would we do what we need to do to stay where we need to stay and even advance, where we need to advance? So complacency, and I've seen it time and time again. Where's so-and-so? Where's Robert? Where's Jason? Oh, they got a little bit too comfortable,
Yeah.
and that comfort. So is there something you look for? Obviously we don't have the access to people who don't ask us to be their sponsor, to work directly with them. But are there signs that you look for to a person who may be becoming complacent? And then what do you do about it?
Well, yes, there are. I mean, I always I like to talk about the ABCs and how it works. A, that we were alcoholic, we could not manage our own life. B, probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. C, God could and would if he were thought. Being convinced, we are now at step 3.
Yeah.
And for me, being convinced, all I do is watch people's feet. What are they doing to show me that they're thoroughly convinced of they've got alcoholism, they've got an illness, and and it's real easy to tell by the guys that aren't showing up, the guys that are they maybe come around for a month or two, and then they're hitting one. Next thing you know, it's one meeting a week, and then then it's one every other week, and then it's one a month, and yeah, those guys, from my experience being around here as long as I have, those guys never stand the test of time.
Yeah.
Some of them have these great big incomes, and they got these little tiny AA programs. For me myself, I'm afraid to do it. I'm afraid to be complacent because it got me last time.
Yeah.
And I don't ever want to go back there. And I was talking to another alcoholic friend of mine. He's on fire. He's got 14 years of recovery.
Wow.
Guy's on fire. And we were talking the other night about, I said, man, I see you everywhere. I said, you work a program like I do.
Yeah.
You're always at meetings. You're always in the trenches. And he said, you know what, Jason? He said, because I'm afraid to not do it.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the guy that's been convinced.
Yeah.
I know you're convinced because you're always on the front lines. Myself, I paid a heavy, stiff penalty. I mean, I feel like I really earned my mercy seat in Alcoholics Anonymous. I paid a high price for it. And for me, complacency is the enemy. You know what I mean? So I have to continually stay involved. And how I stay involved is by doing what we were taught when we got here, is to meetings, step work, helping others.
I want to get to this before I forget that you mentioned it. You talked about mercy.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as mercy, there's a difference between grace and mercy. And grace are the things that we are aware that God pulls us through. Mercy are the things that God kept us from. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about mercy, because mercy leads to gratitude. And gratitude is a constant state that you and I stay in. Mainly, I think a lot of times, Jason, it's not because of what I know, but because of what I don't know that could have happened to me. The unknown is a scary thing. And although things would have happened to me to get me in a position to hit a new bottom, but that new bottom is something I've never seen before. And I need to stay grateful. And I think gratitude for the mercy helps me stay vigilant and which moves me from complacency. What do you think about, as a result of vigilance, is the mechanism that helps me stay away from complacency? How vigilant does a person need to be?
Well, I mean, depending on how bad they want to stay sober, the way I look at it, how important is that to them? And, some of the things that it talks about in the literature that I like is that if you want what we have and are willing to go to any lengths to get it, then you're ready to take these certain steps. So, as far as vigilant, again, I think that a guy that's surrendered, comes in here surrendered and works these steps and stuff and gets involved, those are the guys that usually get a little bit of traction and stuff. And those are the guys, once they start to get going down this path, one of the big things they got to watch is that they don't become complacent along the way, because I'm the way I look at it now, and this is just because of my past experiences, is anything tries to get in the way of me and my recovery, it's out of my life. You know, if I get the girl, I don't care how good looking she is. If she's trying to get between me and recovery, she's out of my life. And the reason why same thing with jobs. I've had jobs that have pulled me out of recovery and stuff like that, and got me to a point where I was complacent and lost my recovery and stuff. And so now if a job gets in between me and my recovery, it's out of my life. I've learned how to, and this is one of the things that I heard from newcomers, people like you and others when I got here, was that make AA the central. You've got to make AA like everything else revolves around AA. So I heard that when I was brand new. I heard that make this number one, God, and then your recovery, and everything else is underneath that, even your family. Because if I don't have recovery, I don't have anything. My family's gone, everything's gone.
For those of you who are joining us, Jason and I are talking about being complacent versus being comfortable. And according to dictionary.com, being comfortable is being in a state of physical or mental comfort, contented and undisturbed, at ease, which is not a bad place to be. I mean, who doesn't want to be mental comfort? Because we drove ourselves crazy for all those years, and obviously the physical toll. Many of my health problems are directly related to my abuse of alcohol and how I refused to take care of me physically and mentally for so many years. Now, I've been sober long enough, so I reversed that course. But nothing's wrong with finding a state of comfort, but complacent is a whole nother level. Jason, when I looked up the word, and it spurred me to do this podcast with you today, it says pleased, especially with oneself. So I'm happy with me, which means your opinion means less. The more I'm happy with me, as Bob D talks about, the ego, and the ego's number one job is to tell me that it doesn't exist. I love that line when he delivers that. I'm not sure where he took it from, but Bobby settles that nicely, especially with oneself or one's merit, where we're patting ourselves on the back instead of thanking God, or thanking that newcomer, or thanking that sponsor. It says one's own merit, advantages, situation. You'll love them. Often without awareness of some potential danger or defect. It says self-satisfied. When I think that I'm here because of me, I've got another thing coming, because I'm at the crack dealer. I'm at a bar because of me. I got me to the rooms of recovery. Working with others and God as he would present himself at my lowest, became the highest. And we talked about it last time, you and I did, is that point of surrender. So I never want to be so comfortable that I'm complacent. I want to be comfortable. Who doesn't want to be comfortable? Who doesn't want to sleep in a nice bed? Remember where they're at the next day. Remember where our car is at. Have a job where they're not giving us a pink slip, but a paycheck, all those things. But we have to be very careful that we don't get too comfortable that it becomes complacent. And one of the things that my dear friend and sponsor of 32 years before he died of cancer, Jack Fisher in Las Vegas, told me, Jason, I knew, and you've heard this story before, I knew early on that something was wrong. I'd already come back from my relapse at 71 days. I was sober about 6 months, and I knew something was wrong. And I went and I asked Jack, I said, Jack, something's wrong. I was getting too comfortable, and I couldn't tell you that it was complacency, but it was. but it made me feel uncomfortable. And I went to Jack, and we'll talk about sponsorship as well and how important that is. And I went to Jack. I said, Jack, what is missing about me? There's something I don't understand. And Jack said, Bob, you need to be a servant. You need to serve others. Service is your missing ingredient. If you're actively, keyword here, actively involved in service, I've never known anyone actively involved in service who has relapsed. So there's a lot of ingredients that cause us to be complacent. But let's talk about accountability and how with 12 years recovery, sobriety, how you rely on your sponsor to stay away from that, how you work with your sponsees, that they have permission to come to you. You want to talk on that for a moment?
Yeah, no, it's that's the thing. I mean, sponsorship's so important around here. Matter of fact, I just got back from meeting up with my sponsor today. We get together once a week, and we go out to breakfast and just chat. Catch up on things, and then also, we hit several meetings together a week as well. But that's an important factor, because the mind that brought me here to the program is not the mind that's going to get me sober. And I missed that for so many years, because I'm not the guy that likes to ask for help. And I'm, the guy that thinks I got it all figured out and all that. And I learned over a period of about 20 years old that I need to humble myself, and I need to start taking some direction from some of these guys that have been down this road. Alcoholism is a serious illness. And so once I did that, once I finally surrendered, it was a game changer. I mean, I am sure today, I'm absolutely confident, had I not had a sponsor, and I might add a good sponsor, I think that's important. Somebody that understood the program.
Yeah.
If I wouldn't have had that when I got here, if I wouldn't have done that, I don't know that I'd be sober today. Matter of fact, I would be willing to bet I probably wouldn't.
Yeah.
Because I tried and I failed for 20 years trying to do it on my own. So it's important. It's right up there with one of the top things, I think, as far as importance, that it's important to find someone that can actually help you through this thing.
Yeah, that's really important. Once again, as the audience, and you've heard before, when I realized Jack was dying, and I was, Jack died in 2019, so 7 years ago, or 6 years ago, I was 33 years sober, something like that, 32 years sober. And when I knew, Jason, that it was the last time I was going to see him alive, when I got down to my vehicle, I made a phone call to Slow Will in Missouri, and Will has known me from day one. And once again, many of you have heard the story before. I told Will that Jack was dying, and he knew Jack quite well.
Yeah.
And I asked him to be my sponsor. So even at 32 years sobriety, 33 years sobriety, I knew that I needed to be accountable to someone. And there was no one better than Will to hold me accountable, because I know, left to my own devices, I'm one drink away from a drunk as well. I mean, obviously there's more to it. I would have to do more than just fall off the wagon. Tomorrow there would be a sequence of events that would occur, but accountability is so important. Accountability, absolutely. Whether I'm working with someone or someone's working with me, keeps me out of that being comfortable, resting on my laurels. I've always got work to do. As we talked about earlier, Slow Will has always taught me step 10, and I love Joe and Charlie for this, but Will told me that step 10, it reads, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Will says if we clear away the wreckage of our present, it doesn't become the wreckage of our past. And Joe and Charlie, as you are aware, Joe and Charlie are aficionados on the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And Joe and Charlie talk about, we hear about steps 10, 11, and 12 as maintenance steps. Joe and Charlie call them growth steps, GROWTH, growth. They challenge anyone to do steps 10, 11, and 12 on a daily basis and not grow. And when I'm growing, I'm not complacent.
I love that. Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, yeah, that's good that they talk about that, because to maintain is to be going down. So we have,
Yes.
so I look at those as growth steps as well. I mean, you're either growing or you're going. And it's so important for alcoholics to be accountable, to have somebody that they can be accountable for. And also, while we're on that discussion, an inventory. Learn how to do inventory, because even in the book it says that a self-appraisal isn't sufficient enough. And so, it's good to have somebody else that we can run stuff by. And that's where sponsorship comes in. I can't sit and think that I can, look at the steps on the wall and figure this thing out and be accountable. I had to have some direction, and I had to have somebody show me this process. But yes, good points you brought up.
Yeah. And a lot of times, I run this podcast and I do a lot of different things, and you go to a lot of meetings. Mm-hmm. And your sponsor hears things. He knows what you're saying. The sponsors have a magical way of knowing. I said that you weren't in the meeting, but I heard. And so my sponsor, or you, or Dave, or others that I'm accountable to, we know the same circle, and you'd be able to tell if I was going off in one direction or going off in a different direction. And obviously, it would raise some concerns, but. So you want to see me going in the same direction, working, if I stop talking to you, or you'd say, what's wrong with Robert? Robert usually messages me 3 times a week, and you message me back, and we share things in text messages that give you an indication that I'm still accountable. And my response is, how important, Jason, is it, and talk on this for a moment, how important is it for your sponsees to know that you're accountable? And even though they may be apprehensive, they're looking to you for consistency. They're looking to you for direction. They're looking to you for a path, because they want what you have. That's why you're their sponsor. Can you talk about accountability, not only to your sponsor, but accountability to those that you sponsor?
Yes. Well, it's key. I've always said that I won't ever have a sponsee do something that I'm not already doing.
Yeah.
I think that's important. And anybody that does otherwise is, who are we to give out orders? You know what I mean? Unless I'm doing the same thing that I'm directing someone else to do. So, that's something that we do. And then also, I think it's so important with especially people in their first 5 years of recovery, because it's hard a lot of times for them to see where maybe, for example, in a 10th step, where they need to go make an amends to somebody, and they need to look at the exact nature of their wrongs. And it's sometimes, you pointing it out to them and helping them see things from a different angle allows them, and then also, telling them, hey, you really need to go do this. Well, I don't think that I need to. And then, a lot of times they'll go do it. When they finally do go do it, they see the power in doing a step 10. Yeah. And that all comes down to accountability. Yeah. Because we want to stay accountable, and we want to make sure that we keep our side of the street clean, because we are alcoholic. And it's important we stay that way, accountable, and then where it becomes a working part of the mind.
Something you had, and I really, we're such a one mind. It's like looking in the mirror when I talk to you. You said something very profound, and it actually is a scientific principle. You said, if I'm not going forward, I'm going backward. And that lends itself to science.
Yeah.
Sir Isaac Newton, who handed off his theory of relativity and gravity and forward motion, the first basic law of motion that Sir Isaac Newton established in 1684, whatever year that was, he said, whatever the first basic law of motion, and this is science, not recovery, but we can extrapolate it. He said, whatever is at rest tends to stay at rest. Things that are in motion tend to stay in motion. And so I think you're old enough. Remember when cars used to have a clutch and they wouldn't start, and we had to push start them and have the person pop the clutch. These youngsters don't know about that.
Oh, yeah.
So we had to push a lot of cars.
Yes.
And remember how difficult the car was to get rolling? But once you started getting it going, you could almost push the car with one hand. I mean, prior to that, from that standing still, it was, the back on it, and you had to have 3 or 4 guys. But once you got that vehicle rolling, so isn't it easier to stay in motion than to get in motion?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's for sure. It's a good point. I like the analogy. But
Yeah, because I tell people life is uphill, sobriety is uphill, and I don't coast uphill. I can every now and then we can coast for a minute and enjoy the view, but lifelong recovery that you and I have is a lot of work. The work gets easier because we're not faced with having a drink. As prior to what I read in the big book, it says, we're not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we had been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. So our problem, as long as we stay moving forward, has been removed, never to come back again. So Jason's problem is no longer alcohol,
right?
Nor mine. Jason's problem is Jason, and Robert's partner is Robert. And I was telling them in a meeting today, one of my sponsees and I went up to meet another guy to talk to him about being a sponsor, and he's got like 7 days sober now. And I said, the answer to me is always you, and talk about how working with others helps you not be complacent, and how you're very specific and very very targeted in, it's not, you mentioned it earlier. It's not why we stay sober, because we stay sober for the life that we're living, right? Yeah. People actually invite you to things instead of hope you don't come, which is really pretty crazy. But don't you love the life that you've been given? Isn't that one of the reasons that you're no longer complacent? Because you just love this freaking life so much that you wouldn't live any other way.
That's absolutely right. Absolutely unbelievable. I passed that on. Now, my sponsor had told me that when I very first got involved in the program, is he said, God's got something beyond what you can comprehend for yourself. Do you believe that? And I was skeptical in the beginning, but I went ahead and trusted the process, and I see what he's talking about now. I've just got an absolutely amazing life, and it's all due to taking those actions and really getting into service. And there's even that line in the big book that says nothing will ensure immunity like intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when all else fails. See, and I believe that's probably the single biggest contributor to not being complacent in my recovery, because I've always got obligations going on. I've got either commitment with the treatment center, or a commitment to go work with an alcoholic, or these certain meetings I hit every week, and it just you just become part of this thing. It starts to become a working part of the mind, and It just keeps you in the middle. I think that's the one biggest thing with newcomers when I'm talking to them about the importance of that step 12. They say that step 12 is like 90% of the program, I've heard.
Yeah.
And it's the foundation step. I always thought my foundation was step 1. Well, it's actually step 12. It's about service. And I
Yeah.
get it now. And the reason that is so important is because it gets me outside myself. It frees me from bondage, and it keeps me in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous.
You know, I'll tell you, and I really appreciate that. And that's what it really does. Working with others, as I'll repeat myself, as I said today, the answer to me is always you. And we have a common friend. It's one of your sponsees. And I was telling her the other day, pay close attention, because you are the future of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, at some point, you know, your sponsor is going to pass away. You know, he's older than me. What a great guy he is. And I'm 71. Just as Jack was dying of cancer, he was a rather young man, is in his 60s, but he had 44 years of sobriety. And I asked Jack, I said, Jack, what do I tell him? Because I knew, Jason, that he was going to pass the mantle, as it were, to me, and I was going to carry the message that he was carrying. And when Chuck C died, Chuck C was a good friend of mine. We had some shoes to fill, and someday, just as I had to fill Jack's shoes, he said, Bob, tell him it works. And so when we sponsor, when we work people, it's not investing in them for our sake as much, although it is to our credit and to our sobriety, but it's investing in recovery in the future, because we view these people as the history, or we're the history and they're the future of recovery. Wouldn't, you know, doesn't that's pretty freaking exciting to know that we're working with a person that if they do right, one of the people I was mentioning earlier before we started, I'm excited that I'll get together with her, because I view her as the future of recovery. And all I want to do is invest in her so she becomes this sounding board, this mega voice for recovery, because people will follow this person in a way that never followed me, because she'll be sober when she dies. She will be sober longer than me when I die. And that's really exciting. And doesn't that keep us from being complacent, where we find that golden nugget and we invest in them? Learn everything you need to learn, because I might be gone tomorrow.
Yes, that's absolutely true. Yes, good point. It's so important to give these guys an adequate presentation of the steps. And you know, when people do relapse, one of the things that I do talk to them about is I tell them they weren't doing what it takes to stay sober.
Yeah.
That complacency hits them, and they first thing that they stop doing is working with others. They stop going to meetings. They stop, you know what I mean? And it's not long before they've decided a drink's a good idea. So I like to, again, I mean, it's the importance of what you're talking about is finding some of these guys that are on fire. And that's where I like to spend my time.
Yeah.
I like to spend time with the guys because I just like you said, I feel like I'm investing in something that's going to have a huge pay, and I want them to have the same life I have. I want them to be able to have this freedom and peace of mind and contentment, and not, you know, fighting, not worried about triggers or any of that stuff. I just live to be able to live a good, free life.
Yeah. No,
so,
even like your sponsor, he started a meeting a number of months back at a treatment center where they didn't have a meeting on this particular night. And some people would look at him, he's been sober over 30 years, and some people would look at him and say, why are you doing that? Why don't you just rest? But he's planting that seed. And we don't know where the seed is going to grow. We just know we need to plant seeds and hope our message. Matter of fact, I got to give him his 30-year chip, which was an honor to me to
Yes.
be able to do. And here he was at this meeting, 30 years sober, and he's chairing the meeting, hoping that some young man in this meeting will grasp what he's talking about and take hold of it like a dog who finally catches his tail
Yep.
and never lets go,
Yep.
and I think that's, people would look at him and say, wow, you're doing this. You don't have to. You've got enough. You've got a beautiful wife. She's in recovery. You could go and do whatever you want to do. And yet you're here on a Monday night doing this for us. And that's going to keep him from complacency. That's going to keep him from going out. Not that that's his reason. His reason is to invest. But as a result of that investment, he's probably gonna stay well. He's probably gonna. I would imagine that he's gonna die sober and happy and joyous and free.
Oh yes,
There's a connection there.
That's why he's my sponsor. Is for that reason. I mean, it's. I was bringing that up to him the other day. I said, man, I said I just appreciate you so much. I said, looking around, and you're one of the only guys around here anymore. You're one of the very few that has as much time as you've got, that shows up to as many meetings as you do. And I mean, to see that he's the best example of a big book I think a person will ever see.
Yeah.
Always in service.
He's so
doing
humble.
Things like that. And all of these guys that in my mind that are some of my heroes are guys like him and guys like you and guys the Chuck Chambers and Chamberlain and Clancy I and all these guys that have started things that are still going today.
Well, speaking of starting things, many of you don't know it, but Jason and I met on a Saturday morning at a meeting I never go to, taking a sponsee who's no longer my sponsee anymore. And Jason and I met, and shortly after that, I was going to this one clubhouse where Jason and I met, and then I was going to another place, and one place didn't have enough people, and the other place, people were stuck in the mud. They weren't going to change. They weren't going to do anything. They didn't want leadership. They were complacent. And I called my sponsor and I said, Will, what do I do? This one meeting has nobody there and a terrible leadership. This other meeting place has got a lot of people and terrible leadership. What do I do? And he said, well, you've got some choices. You can either go back to the place that doesn't have enough people and grow the meeting, or you can shut up. That was my option, right? And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I don't want to hear you complain anymore about this. You're either going to do something or you're not. And if you do something, you can be an agent of change. If you don't do anything, I don't want to hear about it, because all you're doing is complaining about something not being how you want it to be. And that's when you and I became such great friends in service, and we joined forces. You know everyone, and I know how to start meetings, and I know how to get things going. And to this day, I would imagine they're still running strong.
Yes.
Because you and I decided that complacency, not doing anything, is worse than doing the wrong thing, right? We can do the wrong thing and be right. We can be afraid of. Does that make sense? And
yes.
And that's where you and I are joined, because we know the value of service. You brought what you knew to the table, which was everyone, and I brought what I brought to the table, which is administration, organization, and we put it together. And now, not only I'm bragging, it sounds like I'm bragging, but it's about service. We got people involved who would not have been involved otherwise.
Absolutely. And
boy, that makes a big difference.
Even the text thread is still going today.
Yeah.
We just add new people when we add them. But we got that little text thread that they still everybody stays in contact on that about
Oh,
who's
that's awesome.
chairing and co-chairing, and
Yeah. And
yeah,
they're in,
so
they're like interchangeable parts. I can't do this. Can you help me out here? Can you help me
yep,
out there? So they
yep.
become a very cohesive unit
Mhm.
in serving each other. They think they're serving each other, but they're really serving the program of recovery, aren't they?
That's right. Yep, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that's great.
any other thoughts as we close this segment out, Jason? Anything that you want to talk about how important it is to be comfortable? Let's start with there. How important is it that you and I and Dave and others like us that we find a degree of comfortability?
Yeah, I mean that's it. Is uh, having some balance, trying to have some balance, and you know, I think you and I and Dave, all three alike, know the importance of not getting too comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because then if you get too comfortable, it can come back to bite you. And I've seen people get complacent uh, through that. But yeah, I'm grateful today. I'm comfortable. My life is good. Um, the only thing I talk about the importance of being able to stay in the middle of the program, and anything that comes into my life that tries to get between me and my recovery has to go. And on the other hand, I mean, anything that can come and add to, well, I'm more than welcome to have them,
Yeah.
part of this thing. So uh, that's what keeps me comfortable and keeps me going.
You bring up so many things that are so relevant, and I want to. Things don't always end up as they appear. One of the things that I do, and you probably do your version of it as well, just because I don't like it doesn't mean I don't need it. A lot of times I'll reject things that appear to be contrary to my thinking,
Yeah,
but I really need to examine that because one of the things I think is what if there's 10%? What if there's 15%? And I'm rejecting 85%. If I don't look at 100% of this opportunity, I'll
yeah,
extract the 10 or 50. It's that contempt prior to investigation. I need to investigate everything. Why
yes,
don't I like it? Why am I pushing it away? And then I take my own inventory, say, why are you upset about this? Why are you upset? I need to examine the whole thing. It's like cleaning a fish. I might not eat the whole fish, but the part I eat is real good. Real good. I might
yeah,
throw 50% of the catfish away, the bone, the tail, the head, save that for another group of people. But I want the fillet. And unless I'm willing to cut open and dissect and really take a look at that fish, let's talk about that for just a moment. Isn't that what keeps us from complacency? Um, Looking at everything before we have the contempt prior to investigation.
yeah. That was that. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, it's important. That's important. Contempt prior to investigation. I was always that guy that did that too in the past. I was always the guy that thought I knew the answers, and now what AA's taught me is that that before you know fully. I'll give you an example. I used to hear things about certain churches and all of that, and so I would just repeat what I heard. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Oh, that's no good. They're no good. They're, this and that. And I don't really know anything about them. I
Yeah.
haven't went and investigated churches out
Yeah.
or anything like that. So how do I have the right to go and start saying things about these guys? And AA's taught me that lesson. AA's taught me, just to keep your mouth shut, and until you have that thing thoroughly investigated and examined it yourself, you can't talk bad about it.
Yeah. You
So
need to examine it.
you have to
And
examine
and
it.
and I may reject it. It's
Yep.
like a personal a person's opinion or viewpoint on me or you or Dave or Whitney or what have you, or Heather,
Yeah.
we have to look.
Or people, people too,
Yeah,
Robert. You know what I mean? If I hear something said bad about somebody else and I run off of what they're saying, well, that's not fair to the person,
that's
right?
not. And
So
yeah,
that's one thing I don't ever want to get caught up in either, is gossip and stuff like that. So
and you bring up something important because it's a magnifying glass. Just because a person may not be right in their assessment of me, obviously I'm portraying something in a way. I may be correct in my assumption or what I'm reading on the book, but it's how I present what is correct that sometimes makes a difference. And I'm not saying something so I can say it. I'm saying something so that it'll be heard. And that keeps me from complacency as well. It takes me you know, it helps me take my inventory. Why aren't I? And we get a lot of this from newcomers, individuals that we sponsor. And I ask my sponsees on a regular basis, how am I doing? How am I connecting? Does it make sense to the newcomer? You're closer to being a newcomer than me. If you walked into the rooms today and heard me share, what would you think? Would you think I'm one of you, or
yeah,
would you think I'm better than you? My message may be better. It certainly has proven to me my message
yeah,
may be better because it's out of the big book, but the way I'm delivering it is not better. Therefore, it doesn't matter what I say, it's matter how it's received. And that keeps me from complacency as well.
yes, yeah. That's a great way to do it, is to do exactly what you're talking about. Get some feedback from people that are have a little bit less time. I
Yeah.
try to do that too, because sometimes I think sometimes, and you so more so than me even would know this, is I can, sometimes we get so far removed from being a newcomer that sometimes we forget what it's like. And sometimes just even in having conversations with some of these people that are honest and stuff like that, I laugh about it now, because it's like we forget how far we've come,
Yeah.
and we have to be able to make it so that these guys are able to identify with the stuff that we're talking about. And
Yeah.
sometimes they don't. Sometimes I might come across a little bit too brash, because just
And
because
yeah.
I've got a lot more time, and I'm passionate about what we do, Robert.
And I
I've got
make
a
no
lot of
apologies.
passion.
If it's written in the big book, I make no apologies. And
Yeah.
with this common friend of ours, before I was leaving Utah, um, it was so important to me that this person and I, we parted as friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad we did. This person had a considerably less time than me, but their opinion mattered.
Yeah.
And so fortunately they met with me, and we met together, and I humbled myself, said, I was wrong. How did I offend you? What did I do that would take a person like you, well-meaning, wanting to like me? How did that affect you? What can I do better as your friend? And it took a minute for that to find its own level. But today we're very good friends, and I'm so grateful that I took my inventory, and I wasn't wrong in my premise as much as I was wrong in my presentation. And that
Yeah.
comes from
Well, that's
complacency
what
as
I
well.
respect about you, is that you're always doing that. And it's because the program's become a working part of your mind, just
Yeah.
just like it talks about in the book. And that's what's happened for me too. And that's something that I'm so grateful for myself, because this has given us a design of living that works for people
Yeah.
like us,
Well,
if you put it into practical use.
Stephen Covey, in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talks about the 4 L's: to live, to love, to learn, and to leave a legacy. While you and I are living, loving, learning, we're laying the foundation. Someday, you and I will be a memory.
Yeah.
They'll be able to point to the wall and say, this is what Jason taught me. And long after the ground is cold, where we're buried, they'll remember us in a way that we want to be remembered. We don't want to be remembered as the person who could have been.
Yeah.
We want to be remembered as the person who was.
Yeah.
And for no other reason, I stay out of complacency, because I want to be remembered in a way that people will say, you know what? Instead of saying, I'm glad he's gone, I wish there was more Robert. I wish there was more Jason. I wish there was more Dave, because, man, I miss that message.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And you and I know so many that have gone on before us that's exactly how we view them.
Yeah.
Grateful.
Yeah.
We've got to be a part of their life.
Well, as you and we venture off in this world and tell people that it works. I appreciate your time on the Trap of Complacency. Jason, you're a great friend, and I appreciate it. I hope to see you when I travel out there. I'll be out there. I fly in on the 19th. I'm speaking up in Wasatch Treatment Center on that Friday night, and then I'll be speaking at that Al-Anon conference on Saturday the 20th. And hopefully you and I can get together for lunch, do something.
I wish I could. I'm actually going to be in Boston.
Oh, yeah.
Dang it. But I'll hear it though. I'm sure I'll get to hear it. So, but yeah, have dang it. I wish of all weekends.
Yeah. Well,
so
of all weekends,
I'm going to be gone.
It's nice to end up in a city that you intended to end up in.
Yes, exactly.
That wasn't always the case.
Yeah,
who am I with? Where am I at? Where's my car?
Yep.
Pretty basic questions. Jason, always a pleasure. I love you
thanks,
as much as actually more than I love myself. And I'm so grateful to be your friend in this thing we call recovery.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much. Remember, everyone, we got broken apart where we get whole together. And thank you very much for being a part of this podcast tonight.